Shock. The long line of caskets on the street had no end in sight. China suddenly reported 60,000 COVID deaths. Overseas Chinese buy medicines to send back to China, causing drug shortages. The Chinese-American doctor is concerned that China's inactivated vaccine might spread the virus. Does Xi Jinping accelerate the CCPs dissolution due to a crisis of internal trust? It's all covered in today's China Truths. Shock. The long line of caskets on the street had no end in sight. It has been a month since the epidemic in China began, and there is a huge discrepancy between the death toll given by the CCP and the information acquired from the factual evidence. On Saturday, January 14th, a shocking short clip, believed to have been shot on Shanghai's Chongming Island, was shared on Twitter, showing a long line of coffins laid along a street. In the video, the deceased's family members are seen lining up around the caskets in mourning clothes, waiting to enter the cremation. The video maker exclaimed in Chongming Island dialect, "Look, it's just 7 a.m. now, and there's already a lot of people." Twitter user @Joannel wrote, "Students on the island, Chongming, say that many people from the urban areas have died and been cremated on the island." According to NTD, funeral costumes differ by region in mainland China. So, based on the mourning clothes in the video, netizens believe they were from the Qidong or Haimen districts of Nantong, a city near Shanghai. Netizens also pointed out that crematoriums around the country are currently overloaded and that the families of the deceased must find ways to cremate their loved ones' remains as soon as possible. According to a significant number of personal media postings and disclosures, while crematoriums across China have extended working hours, up to 24 hours a day, to cremate remains, there are still a huge number of remains of people who died from the epidemic that cannot be cremated and must therefore wait for a long time. These videos were quickly removed from Chinese social media platforms, but they were also quickly shared on international social media platforms by mainland netizens. Whether on Chongming Island in Shanghai or elsewhere, such a scene demonstrates that China's death toll is currently skyrocketing as a direct result of the rapidly spreading epidemic. The account @Lexman5 wrote, "My hometown is a district with hundreds of thousands of people. 30 or 40 people die every day. It's hell on earth. Too scary. Follow the Chinese Communist Party into the cremation." According to the account @Sneaker Design, I sent this video to the public mailbox of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Chinese Center for Disease Control, and they blocked me. While the country's epidemic situation is absolutely horrible and the outbreak's peak has yet to occur, the CCP has made an unexpected move in response to international pressures calling for the transparency of epidemic statistics. China suddenly reported 60,000 COVID deaths. According to the Epoch Times, the CCP State Council's Joint Prevention and Control Mechanism held a press conference on the afternoon of January 14th and stated that through analysis, China recorded 59.938 deaths related to the new COVID outbreak spreading across China from December 8, 2022, to January 12, 2023. Particularly, there are 5,503 deaths from respiratory failure caused by the new COVID variant and 54,435 deaths from underlying conditions associated with COVID infection. This is a significant rise from the less than 40 deaths reported by the CCP on January 8. Mainland netizens immediately expressed their excitement at the news. A series of questions expressed doubts about the accuracy of the data. Only ghosts believe. Less than 60,000 people have died from the new coronavirus across the country. Where did the data come from? From the crematoriums? Deaths in hospitals are easy to count, but how many people have died in remote rural areas with no access to hospitals? It's many times higher than the hospital death rate. Feng Chongyi, a China expert and professor at the University of Technology Sydney in Australia, told the Epoch Times on January 14 that there are disagreements between local governments and the central government. They are also in disarray. The CCP's decision to disclose the data now is a slap in the face. Mr. Feng said, at first, the CCP, refused to announce. But since international reporters went directly to the funeral homes to review the situation, and because there were many videos on social media showing a significant number of dead bodies in caskets, everyone knows that Beijing lies. Even the relationship between the WHO and the CCP is currently in a highly tense state as a result of the WHO's request for the CCP to release the actual numbers. The Chinese government is under heavy pressure. Even if they report tens of thousands more deaths, they are still far from reality. The actual death toll is 10, 20, or 30 times greater than the currently reported numbers. Perhaps the China Health Commission only reports deaths in a medium-sized mainland city. Overseas Chinese buy medicines to send back to China, causing drug shortages. According to the Epoch Times, with a surge in COVID cases and a serious shortage of medicines in China, many overseas Chinese, including those as far away as Canada and as near as Japan, are rushing to stock up on medications and send them back home to China. According to NTD Television, courier companies in Vancouver and Toronto have recently seen a significant increase in the number of drug packages shipped to China by the Chinese community. Along those lines, generic Tylenol and Advil from pharmacies in Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan, and Australia were quickly snapped up and sent to China. As a result of the high demand, Japanese drugstores have also run out of these drugs. According to the Taiwan-based Central News Agency, pharmacies in Hong Kong, Macau, and Australia reported shortages of painkillers and fever reducers as a result of large-scale purchases on December 16, forcing these drugs to limit purchases. This situation happens at a time when Canada is also struggling with a drug shortage. In recent months, the UK has seen a shortage of children's Tylenol and other drugs due to an increase in influenza and other respiratory viruses. Some big pharmacies, such as Shoppers Drug Mart, have imposed a purchase limit for some drugs. Meanwhile, a Shanghai resident told Voice of America that he couldn't believe it was impossible to acquire medicine in China during such a serious outbreak. He has recently discussed with friends who live overseas how to buy and send medicine to relatives and friends in China. In that situation, the Chinese people circulated the sorrowful phrase, "All of China is fighting over their parents with the god of death." Shanghai citizens were overwhelmed with emotion, saying, "People from all over the country are rushing to help these elderly people. It's a race against time to save the elderly." The Chinese-American doctor is concerned that China's inactivated vaccine might spread the virus. The CCP conceals the epidemic situation, making it difficult for experts to gain access to the information and data needed to look into the issue and find a solution. Dr. Lin Xiaoxiu, a virologist in the United States, addressed a highly concerning topic on NTD TV's Elite Forum show on January 14. Dr. Lin said,
觉得还有一种可能性要真的考虑到，就是有没有可能这个中国的疫苗，因为它是用原始病毒株所制作的灭活的疫苗，如果这个疫苗的严格的来说是要把它杀死的，对，生产过程中出现问题，那么你大面积释放这个疫苗的过程，就是大面积把这个原始病毒株撒播出去的过程。
这个是说起来很可怕。
The problem, as Dr. Lin put it, is that injecting the vaccine into the human body means injecting a living virus into the body if the virus is not killed. So this is the most terrifying thing. Of course, I have no proof. However, I think that if this problem exists, it will cause a large-scale problem. Additionally, Dr. Lin also said that the next big problem would be the production of vaccines in large quantities in a short time.
如果在这个大规模生产这个中国的灭活的疫苗的时候，当中国的这些厂家说我一定要加大产能，对吧？中国去年曾经吹牛，我说一个星期5天我可以打1亿剂的这个疫苗，对不对？去年曾经吹这么大的牛。那么不管怎么样，你要大量的扩增这个产量，对不对？那么这个工厂的这个所有的安全设施能不能到位？那么在过程中，你只要有一个就灭活的这个化学试剂出一点问题的话，你可能生产出来一批的这个疫苗都是有问题。
According to NTD-TV, if these analyses are correct, the fact that the CCP forces people to inject this series of domestic vaccines is allowing the virus to spread on a massive scale. Thus, the ongoing wave of deadly epidemics is not a natural disaster but a man-made disaster generated by the CCP. Does Xi Jinping accelerate the CCP's dissolution due to a crisis of internal trust? According to the Epoch Times, on January 9, speaking at the second plenary session of the CCP Central Committee for Discipline Inspection, CCP President Xi Jinping gave a harsh speech, demanding that the party continue to maintain strict ideology, strict measures, and a strict atmosphere for a long time and ensure always having unity of thought, unity of will, and unity of action. She specifically stated, "It is necessary to quickly and precisely detect unresolved issues such as orders without enforcement, bans without stopping, selective work, and scrupulous actions. No as a rule, regardless of the big picture, protecting each other, replicating each other, being sloppy from top to bottom, etc., that must be resolved to clear the bottlenecks, stagnation points, and entanglements." According to international experts commenting on the speech, Xi Jinping is dealing with a serious crisis of trust within the CCP. The abrupt abandonment of the zero-COVID policy after 3 years of implementation is a typical signal. Professor Yuan Hongbing, an academic in Australia, told the Epoch Times on January 11 that the move has led to devastating results, including shortages of medicines, overwhelmed hospitals, crippled crematoriums, and mountains of dead bodies. This has severely impacted Xi Jinping's national credibility and prompted widespread dissatisfaction inside the CCP's political system. Officials at all levels expressed their discontent by lying flat and neglecting their duties. As one gets closer to the grassroots, the issue of political neglect becomes more serious. Therefore, Xi's request to prevent the phenomenon of political orders not to leave Zhongnanhai also serves as a means of resolving the lying flat issue among officials. According to some credible CCP insiders, underlying local officials' political sloppiness lies a bigger problem, which is the central government's disregard for the local debt crisis. After 3 years of implementing the zero-COVID policy, public officials in many places reported that their salaries had been lowered and they had not been paid. According to Bloomberg, the CCP government's fiscal deficit at all levels hit a record high in the first 11 months of last year, reaching 7.75 trillion yuan, about $1.1 billion. Additionally, on January 4, the WeChat account Bingchuan Sixiango posted an article stating that in the final months of last year, the outstanding urban investment financing of Chinese local governments had reached more than 60 trillion yuan, more than $8.951 billion, creating huge debt risks for the Chinese financial system, which needs a miracle to repay. However, the central government has refused to help the local governments. According to the National Business Daily, China's Ministry of Finance replied to the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference's proposal on January 8, emphasizing the principle of the central government not bailing out local debt risks and implementing the policy that every family takes care of their children. Professor Song Guocheng of the National Taiwan University of Politics told the Epoch Times, "In that situation, local officials can also say, 'We pay taxes to you, so when the central government has a financial crisis, you should fill the gap yourself.' Thus, the financial game between the central and local governments is a very dangerous signal. Central and local governments are not in the same boat and do not play on the same chessboard throughout the country. It has now turned into a chaotic chessboard." Professor Song believes that widespread disobedience within the CCP bureaucracy has demonstrated that Xi's supremacy has been weakened to some extent. If Xi Jinping's position and power are weakened, then the CCP itself will be weakened, even facing the fate of dissolution and collapse. Because, after all, it's an authoritarian leadership system. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We will keep reporting on the COVID surge in China, so don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to get the latest videos. And thank you for tuning in.